During Lent, a lot of Christians will fast from something. They'll give up some luxury for 40 days. So how does fasting from something like Facebook or Twitter or chocolate benefit the Christian spiritually? The bigger question is, for those of us who do practice Lent, how can we make it more meaningful and genuine? The previous video talks about the basics of Lent, and if you're not sure, you can check that out. But in a nutshell, Lent is an optional but very beneficial spiritual practice for Christians leading up to Easter. The last thing we want is to just go through another religious practice and have a legalistic understanding of what Lent is about. In doing so, that will have the opposite effect and just make us even more prideful. The hope is for greater dependence on God and increased humility as we prepare ourselves spiritually for Easter. So here are 3 suggestions on how to make the most of Lent. First, know the purpose of Lent. Second, if you choose to sacrifice something meaningful. And third, humility. The purpose of Lent is to grow spiritually and develop greater reverence for Jesus Christ as Easter approaches. This happens through prayer, worship, and fasting. So let's talk a little bit more about that last one. If we choose to fast, we should sacrifice something meaningful. A lot of people I know will fast from something like chocolate, and if that's meaningful for you, great, blessings to you, good. But myself, I eat chocolate 4 to 6 times a year. So if I were to fast from chocolate, it wouldn't really be a meaningful sacrifice. Fasting is not sacrificing something just for the sake of sacrifice. There's a purpose behind it. Fasting done right helps us hear God more clearly. Fasting done right helps us to grow. Fasting done right focuses our prayers. Fasting helps us realize our own weakness as we give up something relatively minor for a limited period of time. Even this, we struggle oftentimes. We even struggle to remember. So all this reminds us of our need for God's strength. But it's dangerous to fast with the wrong heart. If we do that, it can just become self-reliance or self-dependence or self-sufficiency. And notice those 3 words, self, self, self. So instead of depending on God more, we take pride in our own accomplishment, in our own strength. Therefore, I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. This is your true and proper worship. The Lent sacrifice reminds us of this in some little way, and hopefully we continue to build off of this as more and more we become living sacrifices unto God. Which brings us to our 3rd suggestion for how to experience Lent authentically. Humility. Humility throughout the New Testament literally means lowliness of mind, and in Jesus' day, to be humble was not a good thing. Only those who had the lowest lot in life had to be humble because they had no other choice. But as Jesus typically does, he turns the world's values on its head upside down. Jesus demonstrated that although he was King of Kings, he came from heaven to earth in the form of a baby. His earthly parents were peasants. Although Jesus was equal to God, he voluntarily submitted himself to do the will of the Father. Although he was without sin, he sacrificed himself for sinners so that they could be set free. Humility is not an outward demeanor, it's an inward heart attitude. It's very possible for someone to be pompous and prideful inside, yet display false humility on the outside. Humility is the natural response when we truly see God, when we truly see Jesus, and then we see ourselves in his light. Humility acknowledges that we are sinners and we can do nothing to save ourselves. Humility depends fully upon Jesus Christ. And this is why humility is essential if we are to truly experience Lent. The hope is that this Lent we would grow in greater authentic worship. Be careful that it does not have the opposite effect, that it's not something we just check off the box to make ourselves feel more spiritual. May this Lent and Easter be the most meaningful that you've ever experienced. May we all grow in greater dependence and greater humility in the Lord. Amen. Thanks for joining us today. We release quick Bible thoughts like this every Wednesday, and if they're of value to you, would you consider subscribing? I appreciate you very much. Be blessed and peace.